because you are all here for curb appeal, correct? All right, wonderful. Well, I am Deanna Grundine. I am the owner and landscape designer with Trio Landscaping, talking with you today. Why would I be here talking to you? Well, because I am a landscape designer. Therefore, I know a little bit about what's going on with curb appeal. What are we and how do we apply that though? We're a consultation, design, and project management service. So if it happens outdoors, I have an opinion about it. People usually hear landscaping and they think that that only means that people are going to come out and talk about mowing their lawn or talk about putting some plants in. That is not true. It is so much more than that. Curb appeal is the attractiveness of the house and the land as it is viewed from the street. So yes, mowing your yard is important. Yes, having a few pretty flowers out there to let people know that it's spring is going to be important as well, but there's so much more to that as well. Curb appeal certainly can be done by the walkways. Here we have a walkway in the upper corner that was your standard sidewalk. You can see they have it all ribboned off because they'd already started attacking it with a sledgehammer. They had a sledgehammer party to say goodbye to their sidewalk. I thought that was so fun because it just didn't do anything for their front yard. As soon as we gave them a much more interesting sidewalk, which if you'll notice, it's in the same location and it's still straight to the front door. But what did we add to it? We added a little patio. We redid some of the grading so that way it worked better for their drainage around their house. But it's that little patio that's right up at the front that gave it a lot of curb appeal as well. It doesn't hurt to have the nice little arbor that's over it that gives them some great curb appeal and different types of architecture from the front, but it also gives them some more interesting views as they're sitting on their little patio and staring at one of the lovely concrete walls that are put up along freeways. That really is their view that they get to see from the other side as well. How many people would much rather have the bigger yard than the smaller little inset before picture? Yeah, wouldn't that be great? Here we also did do a lot of stuff down along the boulevard with adding in different plant materials, some different rocks, things that are going to be sustainable. What is the word sustainable? It means that it can grow there, it wants to grow there, it has the right attitude to grow there with less maintenance instead of you forcing a round peg in a square hole type of an idea. This is some other shots from up inside the yard. We reduced the amount of lawn in this particular space as well because lawn is a lot of maintenance. And that's not what the homeowner necessarily wanted to see. They wanted to see more color, more interest, and more texture with the plant material. So we minimized that lawn and we maximized the amount of planting space. That also gave them another layer of curb appeal that works out very well for them. All these plant materials are kept lower because the style of the house, being the Rambler house, is also kept lower. So a lot of these ideas, we're going to share some bigger stuff that we've already gone through and we've shared with other people because really, I can say a lot of nice words, but unless you see it and you see how it's applied, it might not stick well with you. So we're showing you things that have been done. Here's another one for front walkways. This is a little bit different style house. This is what some people consider a one-story walkout type idea, where you have the big garage that comes out front, and then you have the doorway that's set very far back. How many of you might have a house like that? Nobody? So maybe this type of style doesn't apply to you as much as maybe the Rambler house did as well. But we have a nice welcoming, curving walkway, again with a nice little sitting area so you can enjoy your front yard, and then has that grate to the front door. The front, though, also has a lot of other plant material that go around that particular space, again, helping give it some more curb appeal, help giving it more depth and texture in that area. And I can see that today's lighting is washing these pictures out a little bit more because they look really great on my presentation on the computer here. So I do apologize, it being such a nice, bright, sunshiny, lots of snow reflects in the room kind of day. Here's another one. This is a different style of architecture. This one is a little bit more custom. We have a nice gray A-frame to the front of it. The door is up and tucked back, and the garage is in line with the house. How many of you have styles that are more like this? A little bit, okay. Probably not the big A-frame because this is something more unique to this particular homeowner's construction. But what we did is we took that curb appeal now and we wrapped that driveway that comes up along the side, and we gave it a really nice, great, grand walkway that comes up to this door that's tucked way off to the side. That type of curb appeal gives you a nice welcoming to your guests, your friends, your family, and hey, how about yourself? You're welcomed home every day by this great walkway that leads you to your front door. Now I have to admit there's a secret second intention with this particular design because it is quite a long driveway that they have here. This very wide portion to the sidewalk over this direction, there's my shadow, that actually works as a place that the homeowner can back up into and turn around to drive out of their driveway. We put great function into something that looks really great. How wonderful is that? How many of you would like a place to turn around so you didn't have to back out of your driveway every day? Sometimes it gets a little scary, especially with those snow mounts so tall right now. And the bed lines that are created along a landscape, a lot of people want to bring in curves. They want to create something down along that driveway. But this just doesn't work. How many people can see that that just doesn't work? It really divides the whole yard. The curves don't really flow. They kind of look mutated in a way, and it's just rock with some green fluffy stuff, also known as volunteer weeds, that are growing in that. Rock next to a driveway really is not the easiest thing to maintain. And just think about it right now, if you hit it with your snowblower, where those rocks go. Just saying, it's not one of my favorites. So picking the right kind of bed lines that can really draw and emphasize that curb appeal and find the front door, which does happen to be hidden behind that lovely screen of concrete decorative block that's there, it certainly can lead to something like that. So this is just one of those, please don't do those types of things. Let's look at some other fun stuff that works out even better. So this is the before that's up here. We had a lot of 1970s geometric lines, railroad ties. How many of you have railroad ties? Okay, I've talked to a number of people here today that have already told me about their railroad tie stories and how they have to come out. But they tried. They have this little shrub that's over here on the corner. Then they have a few daylilies in the middle and a few hostas on the end. They tried to put some interest, some color, some texture into the front of their house. They tried to keep it low with their Rambler style homes, so that way the landscaping was working, but the bed lines just really weren't working for them. So what we ended up doing is, yes, we took out their sidewalk and we gave them a bigger sidewalk as well. That was on their to-do list. It's not just my idea. I like the idea, but it's their idea too. We did widen that out so that way they have room. He likes to use his bobcat to remove snow, so we had to make sure that it was 7 feet deep so his bobcat fit on there. So making sure that things fit your maintenance needs as well. If you don't have a 7-foot wide bobcat, then maybe that's not the intention to make your sidewalk that big. But if you want bigger, free-flowing, you want some space to add some extra chairs, this is great. This is where they have shade in the afternoon and they can actually sit out and enjoy part of their landscape. So they did want some space out here as well. So we created a nice curving line that goes through there, and then we added some plant material, we added some lighting, and we also added a water feature, a bubbling boulder, and that is sitting right over here, out the front door. So your curb appeal that you're putting outside, so people can enjoy it as they're coming up to your home, can also be enjoyed as you're in your home and looking back out that direction. Not everything needs to be one-sided. Landscaping can go both ways as well. Here's some more plantings and another home like this that could typically be found here in the suburbs as well. This one had a beautiful hedge going across the front. To me, that hedge across the front sidewalk, on the outside of that sidewalk, says, don't come here. I'm a very private person. I want to stay back here. They have a porch that they can sit on. It's like they're creating their own little room. That's not necessarily the wrong answer. However, if it's not the answer for you, if you don't want to be hidden behind there, you don't want to be that private of a person, then that hedge no longer fits your needs. They saw it as being overgrown. Well, it's very mature, and yes, and very honestly, those globe arborvitaes do want to be 4, 5, maybe even 6 feet tall. They need to be trimmed down continually. They end up being higher maintenance to keep them smaller. So we took them all out. And we went ahead and we installed some much shorter plants. These are little forsythia that are along here. They're going to get 3 feet tall. A 3-foot tall hedge in front of that porch along that sidewalk that enters the home is much more comfortable for many, many more people to come up and be welcome to that home because it doesn't feel like they're being excluded from that. Do you see that? Can you feel that? Do you get that vibe? Would you rather have the tall hedge and be private? Or would you rather have it be more open and be able to sit on your porch and enjoy the street? Many more people are finding that to be true as well. So that's another way that we can create curb appeal. It's just making sure that our entryways are more open and welcoming. We didn't change a lot with the land that was here. The yard is slightly sloped, fairly flat. We just redid some of the plantings. We didn't change the bed lines a ton. I didn't make them a new sidewalk. We worked what was there. And yet the home has a whole lot more curb appeal. We didn't even repaint it. I can get crazy, I tell you. Big or small, the types of bed lines that are up near your front door, because your front door really is the main focus when it comes to curb appeal. The front door is your welcoming spot. It's the whole point of having one. Some people do hide it because they don't want to be welcoming. That's their style of architecture. But for the most part, traditional Minnesota architecture is to have that front door be the center, the focal point. And to do that, we want to make sure that our eye leads us there. We can do that with beds that are big or small. So here, the door is tucked back from the garage again. We have a wide arcing sidewalk. This one's only 4.5 feet wide, so it's not huge, but it's definitely wide enough to be comfortable. But we left that bed, that landscape bed, we brought that out so it comes out deeper than the garage. And it helps bring some better balance between the garage itself and that tucked back front entryway. And we added some other smaller plant material in there. Plus we have this really great little tree. This is a little hydrangea tree. Okay, first of all, these start out as being shrubs on a stick. Doesn't really look like he has much of a trunk. He's on a stick, but that plant is really going to get to be about 6 to maybe 8 feet big. That is going to be one of the other focal points that as you're coming here, you're gonna look at that tree first, then you're gonna see the front door. That's guiding you up to that front. That is creating that welcoming curb appeal from there. Second purpose for that plant, that set of windows that's right behind there gets all the headlights through it because they're on just enough of a curve. So guess what that hydrangea tree is also going to do as it grows? It creates an outdoor curtain that doesn't look like it blocks everything, but yet it's put in the right place. So how awesome is that kind of curb appeal, to not see the headlights come down your street all the time just because you put the right plant in the right place and you found one that wasn't going to get too big. Because if we put a full-size tree in there, that was going to be too much for those homeowners. And it would also grow up and then it would be poking you in the head as you walked up the sidewalk and it wouldn't fit right anymore and it wouldn't serve the right purpose. So we found one shorter. The other one that's down here at the bottom, look at how cute and small that little front entry is. It's all of maybe 5 feet deep. It doesn't really have a front sidewalk. But to give this more curb appeal, we created some leading lines up into that to draw your eye up to that very front boxy house. It has boxy posts, it has a boxy railing across the front of it, but that simple curve, as you see it from the street, is welcoming and inviting. We match that with a very slight curve coming in with some very simple plantings because this is in a much tighter neighborhood. So we're balancing the amount of space that's there. Lawn was a bigger priority for them as well, and making sure that they didn't stand out too much. They didn't look too different from all the neighbors' aspects of landscaping as well. But we really stepped it up with just by changing out their little sidewalk that's there. How many people see that sidewalk as a utility item? How many people see it as a point of interest and change and the opportunity to do something really great? Yeah, it really can be. Color. Color is another way that we can add a lot. Do you remember me saying something about pretty flowers? Most of the time, those are going to be hit in big beds of annuals. Why? Because annuals bloom all summer long. The whole purpose of you to buy them every year is because every year you're going to have a fresh plant with that wonderful excitement and energy that says, I want to bloom for you. That is my whole purpose. And the more you deadhead it and take away the ones that it already did, it says, oh, I got to put that back. Oh, I have to make another bloom for you. I don't want to run out. Plants really do get that excited. Annuals do great. So this lower one has a bed of petunias that are down here. Now this homeowner, I have to admit, this was her goal. She wanted a place that she could go ahead and get 3 to 5 flats of petunias and put it in there to make this particular bed every year. Now, how many of you, does that sound like too much work? Yep, that's okay. It sounded like a lot of work to me too, but that was her goal and her ideas. She does it. That's wonderful. The other homeowner over here said, nope, I have a couple of pots that I'll put some things in, and that makes me happy. I just want a couple of pots of color. I love pots of color personally, because guess what happens if you don't get around to it that year? You pick up the pot, you hide it in your garage. Nobody knows you didn't do your front landscaping. Except for maybe your really good girlfriend when she comes over and she says, hey, what happened to your pot? You don't have to admit anything. Don't know, it's not there. Didn't do anything. So she plants just a few pots of annuals that are out there that she can also change out seasonally. That gives her a great opportunity. However, we played a lot with the different types of shrubs that are in here to give her color and interest. Okay, so we have the curvy bed lines. We're making sure that the door can be seen in both occasions, but we're really pulling the pops of color. So over here we have some low junipers. This is a gold juniper that's down here that's only going to get to be about 18 inches tall and is going to continue to fill in that area. We have some barberries. These are the crimson pygmy barberries that have that bright burgundy color, and against that really nice natural cedar mulch, both of those pop very well. In the background we have Annabelle hydrangeas. Okay, this picture is taken in July when they're in beautiful full bloom. So you have that nice big white ball of color. In more shade though, it will be more trio green. Lime green, trio green, I like trio. We also have some astilbes that are back there as well. Those also bloom. There's different varieties. Some will bloom in June, some will bloom in July, some will bloom in August. We can pick perennials. Perennials are the ones that come back year after year for a number of years, not forever. Everybody needs a little bit of work, but they're going to last you a very long time. Typically, you can get perennials to not have to do anything with them for a good 10, maybe 15 years before you maybe want to dig them up, divide them a little bit, move them around and refresh their roots. Sometimes they don't even need that. But this becomes very low maintenance. On the other end, she has a little magnolia tree that she's been trying to get growing in there for a number of years, and it is working with her. So we're giving her some patience on that. That's going to get to be about 6 feet tall and bring some better balance to that landscape. Balancing out the architecture was important there as well.
You mentioned the mulch.
The mulch, yeah.
Do you not like rock? My impression is that weeds grow in mulch.
Weeds grow everywhere. Weeds grow in mulch, whether it's rock mulch or wood mulch.
But less than rock is my impression, just from walking neighborhoods.
A lot of it has to do with maintenance. Because the wood mulch itself is natural organic matter, and when you maintain it only 1 to 2 inches, you will get a ton of weeds. Because
and I've used it for 15 years, and we don't get weeds through it.
There you go.
Used everything from the cheap stuff years ago to the stuff that I get for $2 or $2 a bag at Home Depot.
So you have to refresh it periodically.
I do about a third of the yard every year.
Yes, wood mulch does need to be refreshed because it does decompose. It does add natural nutrients back into the soil.
And it doesn't heat up like rock does.
Exactly, it doesn't heat up. So that is a very good point as well. The difference between the two though, most people are going to not put a barrier between wood mulch and the soil for the reason I just mentioned. It's going to break down, it's going to add nutrients, it's going to become its own organic matter. So for those of you that think that weed fabric is great, no, take a look at it, pull it out, see how much of the weed roots are in your fabric. Now, that made it for really easy composting or disposal right there. You do have to throw it away, it's not compostable. But you can use a lot of newspaper and cardboard if you find that your native soil has a lot of weeds in it to help suppress that. Rock, on the other hand, we don't want it to come into contact with the soil sooner. So we do continue to use things like a heavy landscape plastic and sometimes landscape fabric when we need the moisture to come down. But for the reason that I just mentioned before, I only use fabric where we need to because the weeds will root into it.
Well, and also that fabric isn't all that for us, and we have the rock and the fabric, and then changed it because the second landscaper said, this is terrible. And the weeds are, the roots of the landscape plants come to the surface. They ripped that stuff off and here it was. You know, it was terrible.
Yeah, the fabric was highly touted way back, I'll say in the early 90s and things like that. And oh, it's going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread because it's going to prevent a lot of stuff. Well, as time goes on, we get better education, and right now we're still finding that plastic underneath the rock mulch is going to be the best bet to keep a lot of things down. But even when you take that out, you're going to see that your roots are up there near the surface because that's where it could find the water. So that is true.
How about the new rubber stuff?
Rubber mulch, very hot, doesn't always hold its dye, and still very expensive. So if that is a look and a feel and a maintenance aspect that you are going for, because that fits the overall needs, use it artistically. Don't use it because it is a good replacement for yet. It's an excellent question though, but it's very warm yet. It holds a lot of heat, unlike the wood mulch.
You were talking about using newspaper for mulch.
Under the mulch is a weed barrier.
Yeah, under the mulch. But do you have to worry about the ink dyes?
No, right now we have not seen, if you're using your standard Star Tribune, Pioneer Press, the regular sections, not the ad sections, because they do use different types of inks in there, we haven't seen any adverse effects into it. And it typically is going to last 2 to 3 years as your mulch is breaking down, your newspaper is breaking down, and you can get back to another good point to continue going. Or you just continue to top dress mulch over that newspaper and know that you had suppressed that initial set of weeds that are there, because weeds are everywhere. They're in your soil, and then you go to dig it up and you found a weed that was way down there, and now as soon as it came within the top few inches, now it wants to grow. Now is its time to shine. So those are all very good questions and very applicable for making things lower maintenance as well. I do have wood mulch in this particular landscape, and I have rock mulch in the lower landscape. And a lot of that had to do with what the homeowner's needs were and what their maintenance aspects were. The bottom one, we have landscaping all the way around the house. The smallest portion of the bed is 6 feet deep. The largest portion of the bed there got to be 22 feet deep, with plantings and stuff underneath the deck and all that other stuff. So that worked out best for them. Yes, they do find on occasion that they need to go out there and take your vinegar and your salt and spray weeds. Monsanto doesn't own vinegar and salt, so they want you to think that Roundup is the only application for it, but you can make some really great homemade weed killers. Doesn't kill Creeping Charlie though.
So just salt and then fill up with vinegar?
Yeah, pretty much.
Which kind of vinegar?
Vinegar?
Cheap.
Whatever one pleases you. I've used apple vinegar, I've used basic white vinegar. I have to admit that this was proven to me by the aforementioned assistant that is down at our booth right now. He's 10 years old, and he likes to launch bottle rockets. The kind that you mix vinegar and baking soda together. Guess where Mom had all the dead spots in her yard? I do believe I have a link up on our website that is for that as well, but really you don't need a whole lot of salt, so you can take a couple cups of vinegar, and usually it's about a cup of vinegar and then a tablespoon of salt together, and then you can add a little bit of water to it if you want it diluted a little bit as well. But you can use that straight up on your plant material in all the cracks of your sidewalk, because it's not going to be adverse on any of your concrete products or anything like that. And it does work very well, and it does give you some pretty quick results, especially in the heat of the summer when some stuff just isn't absorbing as much. The salt, as you can see, it does do a number on breaking down that plant material and making it more susceptible to the acidity that is in the vinegar. So that's one of my favorite little home options. Creeping Charlie? Yeah, they do really good at just pulling and finding those threads and pulling it back. There was another product that's out there called Trimec that is a hose end sprayer application that if you apply it while it is blooming in the spring, So talk about finding the right opportunity in the right window. That's when it's the most vulnerable. You can go ahead and you can knock it back quite a bit. And we have seen that on a number of occasions, but if you don't get all of it, it is going to come back and it's going to fill in those same spaces as well. However, Creeping Charlie isn't as bad as people make it out to be, because it grows in the shade, it grows in areas where a lot of other plant material doesn't want, and it smells nice and minty. So it's just...
We tried to buy it one time for a spot in the backyard, and we couldn't buy it anywhere.
No, there's a lot of those plants that maybe they once had been sold, and they realized that they're a little bit more aggressive than we thought. Native plant material can also be a little bit more aggressive than a lot of people say, but yet we want natives in our landscape. We want to add a lot more of those plants. That's a whole nother talk for another day though, people. I can go on and on about that as well. If we go back to the curb appeal aspect of it, we can play a lot with grade changes. Grade changes can happen with adding little retaining walls or just mounding up some soil to give you some more topography in your front yard. Because really, how often do you walk out in Mother Nature's landscape and find that she is perfectly flat? No, she has little hills and valleys and little areas of interest. So by adding a little areas of interest and grade changes in the right spots, means that you can really add some visual interest into your landscape. So this area here, right around these little dwarf winged euonymus trees, they're another type of shrub on a stick. We're very Minnesota State Fair style, you know, shrub on a stick. Building this up just a little bit gave enough interest from the street that this house didn't look quite so plank either. We can also add in retaining walls. Number of people have seen this in many of the Bloomington, Richfield, Minneapolis areas because they have such a steep slope that the only thing they really feel they can do is put in retaining walls. That is absolutely an option. And then there's some of the other areas where maybe there is a slight slope to it, but we want to help accentuate that and acknowledge that there's a little bit of a grade change by putting in a small accent wall. This one's not required at all, but it looks really nice and it helps give some more definition of things that are there. Here's another area where just this little accent wall, there's a little bit of a slope. This is 18 to 20 inches tall over here. We had the wall that had to come along the staircase as well because otherwise you see the edges of the concrete that was poured, I'm going to say 70 years ago. But that little wall helps set off that yard a whole lot more. The bed lines that are in the yard makes the grass a focal point instead of an afterthought. The plantings, all in wood mulch out further, all in rock mulch up along the house, helps set a different feeling as well. This one the homeowner just loves, and I can see a number of you guys are smiling at this too. I love it. It just gets me so excited. I really do love what I do, so I love sharing it as well. But we didn't focus on having the lawn be the main part of it. We wanted the landscape and all the love of the plant material to be the main focus of this. Does that not speak great curb appeal to you? Yeah, it's wonderful. Sometimes lawn is a bigger focus. This one does have a lot of lawn. And we created some nice curvy bed lines that come up through here. This is one of my newer front entryways as far as utility and purpose. How many of you have dogs? How many of you have to let them outside into the yard? Right? Okay, so out front here, we have a little sitting wall, so that way you could hang out, you could, have the kids who have friends sit by the front entryway, not have to go that far, but it really sets it up with a great light in the entryway, but it also helps give a great division to what I call a puppy pea garden. So this is pea gravel out in the front yard, which is really what's out in any of the dog parks for the dog to go in. You can scoop it up just like a litter box. You can buy a new bag of rock as you need to put it back in there. By the way, don't put plastic or fabric underneath this area. You do not want that held in. You want to be able to hose those areas down as needed as well. But this adds great curb appeal because this now just looks like a part of the landscape. Unless maybe you don't clean it that often, then it's going to look like a minefield. But when you do keep it nice and clean as your front entry, now you don't have yellow spots all over your front yard. You now have less maintenance to take care of that grass versus occasionally purchasing a new bag of pea gravel to replace what accidentally got scooped up in your clean out applications. How wonderful is that? Not only, they don't have to only happen out the front door, but we're doing this for a number of different townhome associations in different places and other areas for homeowners out their back doors as well, because they want something lower maintenance to do that. This one just happens to be out the front, and therefore I thought it fit into my curb appeal very nicely. How many of you guys like that idea? Kind of want your neighbors with the big dogs that have the yellow spots all over, maybe they should get something like that? Feel free to nominate them, it's okay. Throughout here, we also did have a nice little accent wall on the other side. You see this great big beautiful ginkgo tree that's been here for a long time? Its grade is much higher than the house. We needed to keep slope coming out from the house for proper drainage because we don't want to encourage water sitting in the foundation. So we did have to put a wall that faces the house to adjust all of those grades back there. It actually kind of gives it a nice feature and plays with some of those grades and those transitions that we were talking about before as well. Front gardens. How many of you have a smaller front yard that you just don't want to play with? You don't want any lawn? Did I talk about lawn being a minimal thing now? It's not the maximizing thing. Well, this particular area, you can see the edge of the front sidewalk coming along over on the right side here, and then the house is over to the left. We took out all of the grass across the front. There isn't any left. It is all wood mulch. In here we have blueberry shrubs that are being established, because how many people love to eat blueberries? They're tasty, they're super tasty. By the way, they make a really great shrub that's only about 2 feet tall, and it will have some great fall color to it as well. Nice. So we have those growing across the front. Across the bottom, we have some different ground covers that are in there, and these ones are thyme, because everybody needs more thyme planted in their yard. That's right, I am just that punny. And then back farther, all of these walls are, by the way, are only about 18 inches tall, and they are mortared together so that way you can walk on them and you don't have to worry about wiggly stones or anything. So that way you can come in and pick the blueberries, but you could also walk on the thyme if you needed to. But from the back side, then we have some different perennials that are planted in there, and among those perennials are also planted the edibles. So we have basil, we have some oregano, we had some lettuce, and some different things that are planted in and around the perennials, so that way you have an edible garden right out your door. The fence line that's over there, that actually is the car parking area, because she's parking in her front yard. You don't really want to look at a car in the front yard. So we planted that up with, she had some different squash. We also have some honeysuckle vines, so that way it'll be a nice longevity and attract some hummingbirds and some other things that are in there. But she has some squash and some other things growing on there in the interim as well. All this stuff right out in your front yard. It doesn't have to be saved for the back. It can make some really great curb appeal and some different ideas as well. Of course, that's how it looks from the street. We had to create a little space that was kind of cool from the front as well. So there's that sidewalk again and all the edibles that are out there, but then we also made this great patio space that's sitting in there with a little water feature for some more ambiance, so they can sit right out there and enjoy all of their herbs and be able to pick it. How many people want to go home to that right now? Yeah. I know. It's kind of a trick question. It doesn't have snow. But that is such a great way that we can make our front yard so much more than just something other people are looking at. Something so much more than just a couple of things across the front. We can make our front yard so much more usable. Now, I'm not saying that we have to go quite as crazy as my friend Rosalind. She has chickens in her front yard. You would never know it walking down the street though. But then again, you have so many layers of landscaping that the chickens are like 3 hedges deep and big arbors, and you can't see your house from the front. But it's a really cool landscape. Water features are another thing. I touched on the one in the front yard just before. I touched on the one, here's a close-up of that bubbling boulder that was out in the front of the farmer's house that was there. And this is a close-up of this water feature that's out on this larger piece of property. When we have a larger piece of property, we have a little bit more room that we can play with. And water features are a great way to get some wonderful curb appeal, not only from the visualization of the water running down, but from the noise. And I use that in the best way possible. That beautiful babbling brook noise that happens from a water feature can be so welcoming. not only to your guests, but to yourself every day to make you to want to go be out front as well. So those are a couple of ways that we can play with it there. If you all have looked up any of my information, you also found out that we have been on HGTV Curb Appeal. And so this is where I can be a little bit more than just a landscape designer. I have opinions that definitely go well beyond that, so I can be as opinionated as you want me to be when it comes to being outside. And we started with a house that really, people, it looks so great if we look at it on the computer screen that's here, because it doesn't look nearly as dark as it is up there. I'm usually in a much darker room. But this is a traditional 1970 olive green split entry tuck under garage with shrubs that haven't been trimmed or maintained in probably a good 7 years or so. It desperately needs a new walkway approach. You come up the stairs like a robot, then you got to turn, then you got to turn again to be able to get to the front door. Kind of makes you a little dizzy if you're bringing in any groceries, just to let you know. And you can't really even see the front door from here. As I mentioned, curb appeal for me is really making sure that we have a great welcoming appeal right up to that front door. Oh, I'm using my arrows backwards. So what we did is we took all the landscaping out. I know, just a little bit rebellious, but it wasn't really working for us, and worked with a really great contractor. Okay, I'm full of ideas. I'm not a general contractor, just want to say that up front, but I have a lot of ideas and I have a lot of great people that can put those together. So the homeowner and I worked with the general contractor to say, okay, we need to add more appeal to this house because this front entry is just not working for us. We want to bring that out some. And while we're at it, the style of the 1970 house was just a little bit boring, so let's add a couple of gables to dress it up so that way it's going to look like a better appeal, a better style of house in this neighborhood as well. Yep, that's right. The landscape designer is now redecorating houses. It's okay. We really took that staircase and redid that a lot. To me, I just said, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to curve this up. And everybody's faces went, really? That's awesome. We never thought of that. Okay? That's great. To me, it's like, that's what we need to do. This is what's going to work naturally for you. So I love being able to be that point of inspiration and finding those things that just are going to work out really, really well. This particular picture shows the back of the house where we were trying all the different paint colors so we could find the right one. Because, wow, the husband thought he had 2 different shades of green picked on that house already, but he didn't. They were right next to each other on the paint sample. You can't tell once you get it up on the house. So we have them lining out all different shades of green. Nice sage green was picked. Wife's like, okay, and we'll go ahead and we'll do that with a white trim, right? Because white goes with everything. No, let's just do a nice cream. That'll help bring things together. White doesn't really go with everything. And then we added plant material and curvy bed lines, low plant material that was going to go in there. I think it skipped a page though. No, it didn't. Well, it mentally skipped a page because we now needed to add stone to the front of the house and other things before we can get to all of these great plants. But the landscaper and me just apparently wanted to focus right on the plant material today. In here, low plant materials in front of lookout windows. We have perennial geranium. This is also known as cranesbill and has some beautiful pink flowers on this. We have some Russian cypress or the microbiota that's down in here. And then we have a shorter version of crimson pygmy barberry that's also gonna stay much lower as well. So some really nice plant material. And then we have a cute little tree that's over here in the corner, and that one I believe is our apricot, or a pear tree, sorry, a pear tree that could take a little bit more shade. But that's our after on that house. Did I get a little bit over opinionated here? No, not at all. The homeowner loved it all and it works so much better for them. The cream really does work great. Okay, so we have a box of flowers up there that she waters as she opens her son's bedroom window. So it is maintainable and accessible. And the rest are all perennials that are through there, and shrubs, and some nice new fun stuff. So on the far right over here, that white, we have a couple of boulders sitting. Green?
The lower corner,
Is that a tree
lower
or
right
grass?
corner.
Oh, there is a tree out in the front yard as well. There's a huge maple tree that shades up a whole bunch of the front.
But it's grass though.
And then grass that comes down the rest of the hillside. Yep. So a bunch of lawn that comes right up to everything. They don't have that much problem growing grass underneath their tree, which was kind of cool. Some people do have issues growing grass underneath their maple trees. So here it is again with the sun, the dappled sun coming in. We tied in there was an addition that's over there to the right. We tied that in with just tying the architecture points in as well and bringing the stone and the colors over. But the fun part was really that entryway and having that nice curved sidewalk come up. Homeowner opted not to have a railing here, which doesn't work for everybody. I highly suggested one. They really didn't want one, and we just met it with code. Just enough landscaping in there to meet that space with code. This was done a few years ago. If we were to go back and do any work here, I do believe that code has been updated and that they might require a railing. I suggest to have a railing even if you don't think you need it. You might need it tomorrow.
Just get old.
You just sometimes get tired or you get slippery. So just to bring to closing here, reminding you that landscaping really is to improve the aesthetic appearance of a piece of land by changing it, not necessarily just by mowing it. And our mission here at Trio Landscaping is to express the vision of possibility rooted in the yards, the families, and the people that we work with. So thank you so very much, and if I can answer any other questions for you, I would be happy to.